Happy Memorial Day, folks. Welcome back to hashtag AskGSM here today. For May 30th, 2016, I am Graham GSM Matthews. Of course, dressed for the occasion, wore my CM Punk USA t-shirt. Could not be any more excited for Raw tonight, especially coming off the great week in WWE last week. We had an awesome episode of Raw, SmackDown, a great Extreme Rules pay-per-view, and of course, the elephant in the room. The news broke on Wednesday. The brand split is coming back, baby, this summer. We've got the draft coming back, SmackDown going live on Tuesdays with its own unique, distinct roster. On the USA Network, it's going to be a great time. So a lot of questions here today. Just in general, almost 4 pages filled of questions, which I'll get to in a second. But a lot of questions pertaining to the brand split, which I cannot wait to talk about here today. So before we get started here, a couple things. First of all, I probably want to, going forward, try to limit the question numbers that people send in. A lot of people send in multiple questions, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8, like a lot of questions, some more in depth than others. I cannot continue to answer every single one, so if not all of your questions make it in, I apologize. And it's funny too, because when I first started the show 3 years ago, I struggled to make questions, or struggled to get questions to fill a 15-minute video, which I only had time for, 3 years ago when we started the show, 3 years ago, and back in 2013. But now we have too many questions, and it's always great. I try to answer as many as I can, if not all of them, in an hour to 2 hour window. And I do have time today. I'm off for the summer, of course. I do have time during the summer, more time now than during the school year to answer all of your questions. But I feel it isn't as fair to the people that only get one question in, and I can't really spend as much time on those questions if I'm spending a lot more time on the longer ones or whatever. The more questions we have, the less time I can spend on each question, because I don't want to go 2 hours. I know I did with John 2 weeks ago. That was a bit of a under different circumstances. That was a special occasion. More often than not, though, I can't go 2 hours with these videos, and I don't think anyone wants to sit through 2 hours anyway. So going forward, again, it's not a rule, but I strongly recommend, I would really appreciate it if you only sent in 5 questions max, 2 to 5 questions, if not just one. So again, for the people that don't send in as many questions or as in-depth of questions as other people, they get the same equal opportunity that you guys do. So just want to throw that out there. 2, I appreciate all the support kind of on that same note for the show. I mean, like I said, the show's been going for almost 3 years at this point, 3 years this July. But I've got a lot of great feedback for the hashtag videos for the past 2-3 weeks. The RJ one from 3 weeks ago, John's from 2 weeks ago, last week's episode, the post-Extreme Rules edition. Just text, tweets, people have told me in person, I got an email about it, posts, comments, a lot of that great stuff, saying they enjoyed the show, enjoyed the format, whatever, and I really appreciate you guys, so thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing the videos. All that stuff means the world, so just know that every comment, every piece of feedback regarding the show, and everything else I do is greatly appreciated. So I want to throw that out there. And of course, number 3, if you want to send in a question yourself, you can tweet me on Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Sunday nights or on the wall itself. And if not, you can leave a comment on this very video. I'll be sure to include your comment in next week's video. So with that being said, guys, let's kick it off here with Captain Sunshine from YouTube. What are the chances Raw attains Big Show, Kane, Sheamus, Alberto Del Rio, Dolph Ziggler, the Usos, and maybe Sin Cara? Help fulfill the circle of life by replicating Raw's 2003's quality, complete with a new reign of terror led by Roman Reigns. Of course, that's joking, but would not surprise me at all. I really fully expect them to stack SmackDown. It reminds me of like 2008. Back in 2008, they brought Jeff Hardy to SmackDown, Triple H with the WWE title. They had Taker on the show at that time, Edge, and a number of others. Raw had a lot of star power, but they really wanted to stack SmackDown with as many stars as possible. Same thing with 2009, almost to an extent. By 2010, 2011, they just stopped giving stopped giving a shit about the show altogether. Back then, they really tried to stack the show as much as possible with star power, trying to boost the ratings on Sci-Fi or freaking My Network TV9, wherever the hell they were at that time. And it seems like they're going to try to do the same thing this year with this year's draft, if they bring John Cena to SmackDown and whoever else, which I'm all in favor of. I really think SmackDown needs a strong roster, even more so than Raw, because you really need to establish, if not equal rosters. I know RJ asked about this, I'll get to his question later on. But they really need equal rosters and not have Raw have all the star power, all the storyline progression, and have SmackDown be nothing. Even if it's just up-and-comers, even if it's just mostly NXT guys, that's not enough. They need big names. They need a Roman Reigns or a Triple H, or not a Triple H, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of 03, I'm thinking of your question here, or a John Cena or something along those lines. You cannot stack Raw and expect SmackDown to flourish in that state. Their second question, I don't know about you, but Seth Rollins getting the corporate friend zone handshake from Stephanie McMahon made my Triple H alarms go off. Where the hell is that guy? I've seen jokes about him, how he died at WrestleMania, but they haven't even mentioned him on TV since then, have they? It's got to be a deliberate choice. I'm sure it's deliberate to not mention him on TV, so it's more of a surprise when he ultimately comes back. So where has he been? I don't care where the hell Triple H has been, but I could not be happier that he's not on TV right now. Honestly, I think it's great that they're really kind of keeping him off TV. I mean, granted, we still have Stephanie, but I will deal with Stephanie and Shane more so than I will Triple H. We got a lot of them from fucking, August of 2013 up until WrestleMania with the authority bullshit, him reigning as champion. I really have no desire to see him as champion or wrestling or even as a regular on-air character as a heel in the authority doing that whole shtick again. So I'm glad he's off TV for right now. I imagine he's going to be back in time for SummerSlam, and best case scenario is he's back in time for WrestleMania and not SummerSlam. So we'll see. But I'm sure he's going to be back at some point. I don't know why they're, I do know why they're keeping him off TV. They really have nothing for him at the moment. They're probably going to bring him back to do something with Shane or Stephanie or whatever, which is completely fine by me, just because we saw enough of him for the past 3 years that I do not need to see more of him at any point in the near future. Focus on the younger stars, please. We already have enough corporate McMahon bullshit on TV right now with Shane and Stephanie. Their third question, even though Sheamus does not mean crap today, I'm still surprised Sami Zayn beat him on Raw so decisively. He just dodged the bro kick, got hit trying to dive outside the ring, only to quickly rebound the Helluva kick to win. Sami Zayn's character since day one is centered around being a failure and the hard work it takes to attain true victory, and he's just murking Sheamus. Not that I'm denouncing Sami Zayn's meaningful stuff over Sheamus, but does it say more about Sheamus being a depressing loser than it does for Sami's success? Absolutely. I mean, the whole story, if you watch the match back, or at least when Sami Zayn won, the commentators were focusing on, Sami Zayn, won the match, and then he's going to Money in the Bank, picked up a big victory. But like you said, they really emphasized at the end of that match that, oh my God, the same guy who won Money in the Bank last year won't be in this year's match. He's been on a losing streak recently, which led to them, beginning an angle with Apollo Crews later on that night, which I'm completely, again, in favor of, because it gives gives Crews something to do, gives Sheamus something to do. It's something fresh, new. I like it. I don't know if I'm going to care any more about Sheamus than I do right now, but at least it's a step in the right direction for the guy. But yeah, it's not a huge thing. Like you said, Sami Zayn's character is all about being the ultimate underdog, and it was a great win for him. I'm very happy he's in Money in the Bank, as he should be. But the whole story of that match, or at least his win, was more about Sheamus losing than it was Sami Zayn winning. It's not like Sami Zayn finally overcame his adversity and became a champion or beat Kevin Owens. It's just Sheamus. He just qualified for Money in the Bank. Still a big win, but it said more about Sheamus, as you said, being a depressing loser than it was about Sami Zayn's win. Their next question, Charlotte's segment with Ric Flair wasn't perfect, but Ric Flair had to go at some point, so I'm fine with it. The relative feud with Natalya has been done anyway. The question is, will Natalya get a feud that won't involve her connection to Bret Hart? She's been living off his niece for a while now, or she's been living off his niece. Wait a second. The fact that she's his niece, I'm sure, is what you're talking about. Especially since being Jim Neidhart's daughter does not sound as important, which doesn't blow my mind. I just always find it funny that every single time they have to do something like what a TakeOver 2 years ago, which was, I believe, 2 years. TakeOver was 2 years from Saturday or Sunday, something along those lines. I think yesterday. Anyway, 2 years ago yesterday. Or at Payback, when they bring in someone to, serve as Natalya's manager, it's always Bret Hart. It's never Jim Neidhart. We haven't seen Jim Neidhart on WWE TV in God knows how long. I couldn't even tell you. And he's doing better now. His health wasn't the greatest. He was like an alcoholic for a while or whatever. And I think he went to rehab, as seen on Total Divas. But it's so funny to me. They always bring in Bret Hart, as they probably should, because he's the bigger name moreover than Jim Neidhart. But they don't even acknowledge the fact that she's related to Jim Neidhart. Of course they do sometimes, that she's the daughter of Jim Neidhart, but you never see him on TV. He's never brought in for any of these cameo spots or anything along those lines. It's just funny to me. But anyway, so basically your question is, will Natalya get a feud that does not involve her connection to Bret Hart? Probably not. I don't know where Natalya goes from here. Not that I don't really care, but she's been with the company for 8 years now? 9 years. She debuted in 2008. We've basically seen it all. She got one reign as champion for a cup of coffee back in 2010, 2011. which sucks for her. It really should have lasted longer. She should have been given another reign as women's champion, but it's just not in the cards right now. Charlotte should hold that championship until SummerSlam, and then Sasha Banks takes over. Where does Natalya fit in the immediate future as champion? People like Becky Lynch, Bayley, like they'll have their runs as champion down the line because they're fresh, they're new, they're just getting started. Natalya's been here for almost a decade. I'm not saying she has to leave or she should get fired or whatever else. I'm just saying that they're really... I have no idea what they're going to do with her next in a meaningful role. She'll probably continue to be around and probably be more prominently featured in WWE than she was before the title chase over the last couple of months. But basically, you're asking if she's going to be involved in anything not involving Bret Hart. Probably not. I don't know if she's going to get as much airtime as she has for the last 3 weeks, closing out Raw 2 weeks ago. I don't know if that's going to be happening again. I wouldn't imagine so. I mean, who knows? But she is a great talent. Hopefully they continue to utilize her in some form or fashion, because otherwise I have no idea what they continue to do with her from here that does not involve the championship. Or Bret Hart, for that matter, as you mentioned. Let me scroll down here for the next set of questions from Captain Sunshine. They sent in a lot of questions. Like I said, a lot of in-depth questions, which is good. A couple here and there is fine, but if you send in like 10 questions that are all like paragraph form, not just to Captain Sunshine, but basically to everybody, do not expect me to use every single question. I just don't have the time, and I want to give the time to other people too. So I'm sorry. So your next question, The Miz might be on the biggest surprise role of the decade here. I don't know about that, but it's a bold statement. So they went on to say he won the best WWE main roster match of the year at Extreme Rules, then hanged with Cesaro for 2 back-to-back solid matches on Raw and SmackDown. Are we in the second renaissance of The Miz? Is he trying, or is he the one to bring back prestige to the Intercontinental Championship? Honestly, I hope he is the one. I want the guy with 100 title reigns who shit the bed on 90% of them to finally grant WWE's mid-card some missing glory. Make him the honky-tonk man of Sami Zayn's, Sami and Owens, Ricky Steamboat, and Randy Savage feud. Actually, that's a great comparison. But yeah, with The Miz, I don't know about the first sentence, like I said, about him having the biggest surprise role of the decade here. That's a bit of a bold statement, but I am very happy for The Miz. Of course, I'm biased because I'm a Miz fan. But like I said last week in my reviews and shit of Extreme Rules and whatever, I was happy he won. I would have been happy with whoever won. But I was happy it was Miz because you get to keep the title on him for a little while longer. I would dare say he is doing the best work of his career right now, and even including the WWE Championship stuff, which some people hated. But I thought even now he's doing... The biggest part of his success as WWE champion 5-6 years ago was the fact that he was a great mic worker. And he had some couple good matches, due to his opponents being better than he was, Randy Orton, John Morrison, whatever. But it wasn't the matches that made the reign for me. It was the promos. The guy was one of, if not the best talker, at least at that point getting consistent airtime in WWE TV. I know Punk is a better talker than he is. But he was never really on TV as much as he is, as he was going forward after that. But anyway, at that point in time, Miz was one of, if not the best talker in WWE. And over the years, as a babyface and just wasting away as an undercard guy, he really wasn't that good of a talker after that. I don't know what it was, the fact that he wasn't motivated, I don't know, or the material he was given to work with. His mic skills just felt like they regressed. And ever since coming back as this Hollywood A-lister douche-like heel in 2014, he's been on a frickin' roll. But specifically since WrestleMania, since he won the IC title the night after WrestleMania, Maurice came back, he's got the whole new look. I think it's great, and he's got the IC title, so I really have nothing against it at all. I think he really is having a second renaissance of sorts. I mean, I could not agree with you more there. Again, not about the biggest surprise role of the decade, I don't know about that exactly, but in the second renaissance of The Miz, I could not agree more with you there. Emmanuel Ed's got a couple questions, first one being, so I was watching the original 2002 WWE draft in coincidence with the recent news, and suddenly I started wondering, whatever happened with the NWO being Vince McMahon's poison? There's a segment where Vince gets mad at Ric Flair somehow, got the whole NWO on Raw, and they're mad at him because they want to work for Vince instead of Flair, but wasn't the point of the NWO coming to WWE that Vince brought the group in to destroy the company because he couldn't handle Flair sharing control of the product? I have no idea, dude. I really have no idea. I could not tell you for the life of me. Just because the whole angle, I could not make sense of it because the whole angle did not make sense. From my understanding, as you said, I probably know just as much, if not less, than you do about this whole thing. But of course, as far as I know, they were brought in by Vince McMahon, of course, in storyline to kill the company as Vince's poison. But it was all downhill from there. Ever since like WrestleMania, even before WrestleMania, they really didn't do anything to kill the company. They attacked Rock, they attacked Stone Cold. But other than that, we really did not get much of NWO trying to kill the company. Once Hogan turned babyface, that was it. And the draft took place after WrestleMania. And they just, I don't know if they gave up on NWO or just didn't have enough faith they were getting over as a top heel act, especially without Hogan. I really have no idea. So I'm not going to try to make sense of it for you. I'm not going to waste time trying to answer your question just because I don't even think they had any idea how that angle is going to end up. His second question, speaking of 2002, was it weird that Stephanie McMahon became the reasonable GM for SmackDown? She shifted from being a vindictive annoyance to the benevolent, respected counterpart to Eric Bischoff. Then again, it's Stephanie McMahon, and just like her husband, she has a tendency to try to be both the most despicable, despised, being the most coolest, smartest, and beloved individual on the show. Probably exactly what you just said. I mean, there was never really has been any consistency with the Stephanie McMahon character, like you said, even now, doing the same thing she was 10, 11 years ago, even 13 years ago at this point, 2003, when she was the GM of SmackDown. And she did a great job at it, but she acted like a babyface when she was in the room with Eric Bischoff, but then she was a heel on Thursday nights. This whole ordeal, this whole shebang with her, kind of playing both, sides of the coin here. And she does that today, too. I mean, I was watching Battleground 2015 just last night because my review of the show is going up in the next couple weeks on WrestleRant. And she was like, oh, we got to empower women with the Divas Revolution. At the same time, she's, cutting the balls off from Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins. Like, what the hell do you want to be, lady? And she's still doing the same thing now with Shane. She'll come out as a babyface some weeks and act like a bitch other weeks. It's like, Stephanie just really wants to be cheered, but at the same time, she's great at being a heel, and she can't really stick to one side of her character. And maybe it's creative. I'm sure part of it is creative, kind of giving her mixed signals and telling her what to do, and it's both babyface and heelish and whatever else. But I don't think you could have hit it any more on the head than what you did, with what you said, than talking about how she's basically the same. She was the same then as she is now, with playing both sides of the coin. Their next question, with the NXT title match at TakeOver being a steel cage match and 2 weeks away, is it still too late for my suggestion to grant the Demon a bigger storyline focus? The whole core of the Demon was initially established as Finn Balor tapping into his deepest, darkest thoughts, but I feel it's been out of focus for a while now. I hate to say it, but do you think NXT's writing team has become complacent recently, at least in regards to the Demon? I don't know if it's become complacent. I think it's just been ignored. Like I said 2 weeks ago, I love the idea of giving more focus to the Demon character, having it become a bigger storyline focus, talking about how it's kind of the darker side of the Demon or darker side of Finn Balor, and how the Demon does things that Finn Balor won't. Because otherwise, I mean, people have been complaining about this for a while now, but it didn't really start to stick out to me until, like, I don't know, TakeOver Dallas or whatever, or at least until just recently, that they're basically one and the same. It's not like the Demon has, a different finishing maneuver than Finn Balor. It's not like he cheats to win or does anything along those lines. We only see the Demon on the TakeOver specials, and that's about it. So, and especially with this presumably being Balor's last NXT special, and, and then after that he's probably gone and whatever else, and I think this is their last chance to make that Demon character mean something. Of course, they could do it on the main roster, but as you said, Finn Balor or the Demon or whoever is undefeated at these TakeOver specials. He's never been beaten. He's been unbeaten since December of 2014 when he beat the Ascension alongside Hideo Itami at TakeOver Our Evolution. And since then, he's gone undefeated as the Demon, as Finn Balor at these live specials. And also including Beast in the East, I guess. I was going to say just TakeOvers, but I guess also including Beast in the East. But nevertheless, I mean, again, I don't know if it's become complacent. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think they should be doing more with it. At this point, all hope is lost. They've already recorded the shows. I don't know if they talk about it. There's really not even, I mean, you just said 2 weeks away, but it's next Wednesday. They have the go-home show this week, which is already in the can, and then they have the show next Wednesday. So that's it. I don't have any expectations for them to mention the Demon or whatever else. I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately, but I do agree that going into this special, that should have been a bigger focus, as Samoa Joe lost to the Demon in London and then again in Dallas, but beat Finn Balor rather as himself in Lowell. And then come TakeOver, will we see Balor? Will we see the Demon? Will it make a difference? That should have been a bigger storyline focus, as you said. I really like that aspect of it. And their final question. By the way, I actually watched Extreme Rules twice, once by myself and the second time with my brother. However, I chose to skip rewatching the Asylum match. When he got to it, I liked going back to the main event, the 4-way, and even the US title match. But the one match I did not rewatch again was the Asylum match. To be honest, I sort of enjoyed it when I saw the match live, but I fear if I ever see it again, I'm going to turn on it. Be honest, would you earnestly, that's a tongue twister, would you earnestly rewatch the Asylum match? Just the match alone? Well, here's the thing about my viewing habits with the network, which I know is very weird and different from just about anybody else. I have not yet watched the main event back, or even the 4-way, which I said I would, and I have yet to do so. Maybe I will do this. I'll do so before Raw. I have some time to kill before Raw. Maybe I'll do so then. Just because I was there and I want to see how it came across on TV. Otherwise, if I watched the pay-per-view itself, like on the network, as most of you I'm sure did, I don't know if I would watch it back just because I'm watching it back in the next couple of days just because I was there and I want to see it from a different perspective. Then again, I have not yet rewatched SummerSlam from last year either, and I was there for that show, or TLC. I've yet to rewatch that show. Then again, Extreme Rules I thought was better than both of those shows, so who knows? But to basically answer your question, again, it goes back to what I was saying at the start with my viewing habits as a WWE Network viewer. I do not go back and watch one match at a time. Sometimes I do. I rewatched Randy Orton versus Christian from the 2011 Over the Limit pay-per-view on the 5-year anniversary last Sunday, not yesterday, but the Sunday before that. I did not rewatch the entire pay-per-view because the pay-per-view sucked. And maybe if the whole pay-per-view was good, I would have rewatched the entire pay-per-view in its entirety. Extreme Rules, here's the thing. I would not rewatch one match back other than maybe the 4-way to see a different perspective, as I said. But more often than not, I don't watch pay-per-views back, even by one match or just in their entirety or whatever, until like a year later so I can review it for WrestleRant. So, in all likelihood, I will not rewatch the full pay-per-view. I will not rewatch Extreme Rules in its entirety until next year. So, to answer your question, would I rewatch the Asylum match by itself? Probably not. Probably not. If I'm going to rewatch two matches from the same show, I'm going to watch the whole show. If it's one match, maybe just that one match. But if I'm going to rewatch the 4-way and the main event, and Styles and Roman Reigns, then I'll just rewatch the whole show. So I'll rewatch the Asylum match too. I don't know if I'll turn on it. Like you said, I liked it live. I liked being there live. It was not an amazing match, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I would rewatch it again, but on its own, by itself, I wouldn't. But don't take that personally as I hated the match. I wouldn't rewatch the US title match. I wouldn't rewatch the women's match by itself. So it's not just the Asylum match. And that kind of goes for mostly everything I watch on the network. The first KFC from YouTube as well. Thoughts on SmackDown going live? Is it a waste that guys like Damian Sandow and Barrett got released when there's going to be a brand split? I mean, Barrett left on his own. But I'll talk about that aspect in a second. So 2 parts to your question here. Thoughts on SmackDown going live? Cheap plug here. I don't want to kind of go away from the question, but I did talk all about this in exclusive audio last week for nextdaywrestling.net. The audio is also available right here on YouTube if you want to check that out. I went up on Wednesday, and it's under the miscellaneous playlist if you want to check that out. Or just go to my channel under videos. It's up there from last week. But anyway, in a nutshell, thoughts on it? I love it. I love it. And I've always said that SmackDown going live on Tuesdays wouldn't be awful, but I mean, after a 3-hour pay-per-view, a 3-hour Raw, and a 2-hour SmackDown on Tuesdays, that's a bit of overkill. But I'll take that over a tape show on Thursday. I think it's the next step. Not the first step. They've already done a lot of things to make SmackDown more relevant, more enjoyable on a weekly basis since moving to USA, bringing in Morrow, making it feel more relevant, whatever, in the past couple of months alone. This is a huge step for SmackDown and for WWE. It's like a huge step for Man and for Mankind or whatever. A huge step for SmackDown and all of the WWE, basically, you know? Just because I think SmackDown has gotten a lot better recently, and I think going live was the next step in making it truly relevant in the eyes of the casual fan. So I think it's a great move, a great idea. And the second part of your question, is it a waste that guys like Sandow and Barrett got released when there's going to be a brand split? Not a waste. I just think the timing is terrible. I tweeted this out on Wednesday after the news broke that it's not a waste. I think it's just sad. You know, Cody Rhodes left on his own. Would he have benefited? Maybe he'll be right back to the undercard on SmackDown if he was to stick around and he got drafted to SmackDown. Maybe Cody Rhodes wouldn't have come back then. He would have been Stardust forever on WWE Superstars. Maybe nothing would have changed. But I feel like, and I've said this for years, that bringing back the World Heavyweight Championship, when they did away with the World Heavyweight title, I knew for a fact that guys like Dolph Ziggler, Wade Barrett, Damian Sandow, Cody Rhodes, all those kind of competitors would never get a reign as world champion. Unless something miraculous happened, they were not getting a reign as world champion. Ryback has 1 foot or 1.5 feet out the door. He's pretty much done. I tweeted that. Someone asked me, is Ryback actually gone? I said, no, he's still under contract, but I doubt he's coming back. But guys like him, and I asked Ryback about it earlier this year. One of the first days of 2016 when I interviewed him for HatingRemote.com, I asked him, would you want to see the brand split back, and do you think people would benefit from the return of the World Heavyweight Championship? He said absolutely. He said people like Barrett, Bryan himself, Dolph Ziggler, all the people I just mentioned would benefit greatly from a return of a brand split, and specifically the World Heavyweight Championship. And it's so sad that they're all pretty much gone. Bryan's retired, Cody Rhodes quit, Ryback's in contract dispute, Barrett's gone, he quit too, he let his contract expire, Sandow got released. It's really sad. Really sad. So not a waste. The brand split won't be a waste, but I think it really is bad timing for those guys you mentioned, because it really could have done them wonders had they stuck around or not gotten released. Fango Kid, or I forgot, I can't pronounce your username, I apologize, but Mitch, I know, is your actual name, but that's your YouTube name. So Fango, we'll go with that. Fango Kid 95. Do you think WWE should ever do what TNA did at Genesis 2011 and have the heels make a near/complete clean sweep perhaps at a Night of Champions? That would be cool. The closest we came to that from what I remember, and it's not like 5 members. I remember what you're talking about from Genesis 2011. It was all the members of Fortune, right? Fortune or fucking Immortal or whoever. And I know Jeff Hardy lost like the world title that night, but I know what you mean. But the closest we came to that in WWE in recent memory was actually even a better example, which I'll give in a second, but the Shield at Extreme Rules 2013 when they won the US and tag team titles. But even better than that, Armageddon 03 when Triple H won back the World Heavyweight Championship, Randy Orton won the Intercontinental Championship, and Batista and Ric Flair, I don't know if they won the belts or they retained them, but they were the World Tag Team Champions by the end of that night. So every member of Evolution had a championship, which was a great visual. So it's not unprecedented in WWE. I don't know who you would do that with now. You said have the heels make a near/complete clean sweep. So I mean, it doesn't have to be a faction, I guess is what you're saying. But we've had pay-per-views before where almost every heel won. Maybe even a Night of Champions back in 2013, I feel like. Curtis Axel was the IC champion. Paul Heyman and Curtis Axel beat Punk. Daniel Bryan won the WWE title, but that was it. The Shield retained the tag titles. Dean Ambrose retained the US title. AJ Lee retained the Divas title. So pretty much every other match except for the main event, a heel won. For the title matches anyway. So we did come close. We have done that before. We've had that before. It's not completely unheard of. Will it happen again? I'm sure it will at some point. Should WWE ever re-sign Jimmy Yang or Frankie Kazarian? Kazarian, yes. Jimmy Yang, no. Just because both guys technically never really got a fair shake. Jimmy Yang was with the company for a long time. It was for like 10, 15 years. And I would say, like, he was a jobber the last time we saw them. They could never bring him back and repackage him. But then again, we had Luke Gallows, who was also a loser for most of his WWE career for many years, for almost 5 years, before getting fired and then brought back as this great member of the club as part of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. So it's not unprecedented. It's not unheard of. Could it happen? Yes. And he's a great athlete, but I think at this age, at the age he's currently at, like 40 or something years old, unlike Luke Gallows, who revived his career over in Japan with Carl Anderson, Jimmy Yang, has he really done anything of note in the past couple of years? He's probably still doing indies, but it's not like he became world champion in TNA or, kicked ass all over in Japan. And again, the last time we saw him in WWE, he was Jimmy Wang Yang, the racist redneck rookie, not redneck rookie, the Asian redneck, that whole stupid gimmick they were doing with him at the time. I thought it was hilarious, but it was also very racist and a waste of his talent. Frankie Kazarian, on the other hand, I think absolutely could be brought back. Will he be? That's debatable, but I think he should and could be. Especially, maybe not on his own, but with Daniels as part of a tag team. And again, I think it could happen. They've brought in tag teams before. They brought in that, just recently, that tag team from Australia, TM61 or whatever, to NXT, and they're great. I mean, they're a lot younger, but Daniels and Kazarian are a great tag team. I know I think they're currently the tag team champions right now in Ring of Honor, so they might be tied up with that for right now. But beyond that, I think they would be golden in WWE, if not just NXT. So then there's a chance of Kazarian coming back. Jimmy Yang, probably not. His third question here. Since the brand split is coming back, I would really like to see the Bragging Rights pay-per-view be brought back. Maybe just because I'm biased since I attended the 2010 event. Would you be in favor of it returning? Not really. I don't think either of those shows are really that good. I like the concept. And like I've talked about this before. I feel like someone has asked this before. But the concept was good. The timing was terrible. They started doing the pay-per-view in 2009. The 2010 show I thought was better. The 09 show, I guess the 09 show is pretty good too. We had that great Iron Man match in the main event between John Cena and Randy Orton. Again, but they did it at a time when the brand split was all but dead. It died literally less than a year after the 2010 show. So why would you bring back the pay-per-view? Now I can see why, but before that, in 09, no one gave a shit about the Raw versus SmackDown rivalry. If they started doing that, and they kind of did at 05 Survivor Series, where it was Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, that was cool, but that wasn't like a Bragging Rights pay-per-view, that was just Survivor Series, and it made a lot more sense. And that, to me, was when the brand split was at its peak, from 02 to 05, so it made sense to do a pay-per-view at that point. To do it in 09 and 2010, when the brand split meant nothing, it was a waste. So once they bring back the brand split and maybe they get it off on the right foot, and that's a big if, and they do it properly, they execute it very well, better than anyone could have hoped for, then we'll talk about the pay-per-view being brought back. And hopefully it still means something by then, or it could mean something by then. You can't bring back the brand split in July and then do a Bragging Rights pay-per-view in like October or September or November or whatever. That's way too soon. You have to establish Raw and SmackDown as two separate shows, two separate entities in the long term, and not risk it for a short-term benefit of a pay-per-view like Bragging Rights. So again, long-term, I think it could be brought back, just not ASAP, not anytime soon. And their last question here. Potentially, I could see Kevin Owens winning Money in the Bank and getting drafted to SmackDown as a way to end their feud between him and Sami Zayn for the time being, so the rivalry does not get overdone. What are your thoughts? I did not even think about that. That's a great idea. But I would say that as great of an idea as that is, I would have Owens go to SmackDown. Like you say, he could be the face of that show, whatever. But I also want Sami Zayn on SmackDown too, kind of as like their SmackDown 6. And I would love to see the feud culminate at SummerSlam. I see what you mean. These two are destined to fight forever, as WWE themselves have said. But I think there's so much momentum for this feud right now, coming off this stuff at WrestleMania, and Payback, and Extreme Rules, and soon to be Money in the Bank. It would be premature to cut it short. I'm actually, now that you mention that, I could totally see that happening. I don't know about Owens winning Money in the Bank. That's pretty likely too. But what's more likely is them getting split up in the draft. Personally, I would keep them together just so they can have the big blow-off at SummerSlam or Battleground. Hopefully SummerSlam. They could do like an Iron Man match or a fucking ladder match. Or we've already seen 2 ladder matches from them, including Money in the Bank. So probably not. But Last Man Standing would be cool. So, again, it's likely. That's a great idea, but I would keep them together just so we can get the big payoff to this feud and not wait another year or whatever. Like Ambrose and Rollins, they had their big payoff inside Hell in a Cell that did not make the revisiting of that rivalry a year later at Money in the Bank in the summer of 2015. It did not make it feel any less meaningful. You know what I mean? So I would keep them together just for that reason alone. Next couple questions from Frankashire15. Should have Apollo Crews' first loss in the main roster been saved for a bigger moment? Yes, but at the same time, I wasn't crying over it. He should have sold the injuries for one thing in the hands of Sheamus. I have no idea why he didn't. He came out like a house of fire. It's like, you just got beat up, dude. Why are you not selling the injuries? I don't know if that was Creative's fault or his fault or whatever. And then he lost clean, so it would have made more sense if he sold the injuries. You could still say he got attacked backstage, and that was the reason why he lost. Sheamus got in his head. That was very bizarre, though. But at any rate, I think, I don't know if it really mattered that much. It's not like he lost to Heath Slater on Raw. He lost to fucking Chris Jericho in a Money in the Bank qualifier. And didn't even really make a big deal about it. They didn't even mention that he was undefeated in WWE at that point. Why would they? Because the guy hasn't been on TV in a long time, basically. It was on Raw maybe a month or so ago, but before that, before Extreme Rules, he hadn't been on pay-per-view he hadn't been on Raw or SmackDown for like a month or two, ever since getting called up to the main roster. So, should have been safe for a bigger moment? Yes, but I'm not crying over it just because I feel like Baron Corbin's first loss was a hell of a lot more of a bigger blow to him, because that's his whole character, is about dominating people. Crews, he's over enough where it's fine, or, he's a great enough athlete, he's a babyface, so it's a little different for guys like him, but it didn't bother me too much. Did you watch Mick Foley's podcast with Shane McMahon last week? If so, any takeaways? I did watch it. I enjoyed it. I actually really liked it. One of the better podcasts in recent memory. I liked the one with Mick Foley between him and Stone Cold right before WrestleMania. The Big Show one was good. Have we had one since then? I don't think so. But they're all pretty great. I enjoyed that one too. The most interesting part was any big takeaways. I mean, most of it was stuff we already knew. The relationship between Shane and Vince was fascinating. I thought that was great talk. Again, not stuff that we didn't already know for the most part, but still great talk. But like I said, the biggest takeaway I would say was when Mick Foley said, "So what's your relationship with your sister Stephanie?" And he said, "It's fine." And that was it. And Mick Foley said, "Do you have any resentment? Are you jealous?" And he said, "No, I'm not jealous at all. What are your thoughts on Triple H?" I'm glad he makes her happy. That was like, whoa, that's a red flag right there. And he said, "Are there any, is there any animosity between you two?" And he said, "Nope, no animosity. And if you don't believe that answer, well, I don't know what to tell you, Mick. That's the truth, and whether you like it or not." It was a very hostile answer, not like, "Fuck you, Mick, for asking me that question," or anything like that. It was just very like, whoa, like I said, red flags. So I don't know if that was a shoe, and most of the rest of the interview was a shoe, but they might have told him to say that just because they might be building to a match with Triple H at SummerSlam. They want to keep it kayfabe to make it feel real. I have no idea, but that was a big takeaway for me. That was like the one eyebrow raiser that was like, oh, geez. People should watch it just for that, 1 30-second bit. But the rest of it was really good. I would recommend checking it out. In his third question here, did you listen to any other podcasts, or do you listen to any other podcasts like Talk is Jericho or The Ross Report? I've mentioned this before. I've answered this question before, but I listened to both of Stone Cold's shows. I mean, not all of them are wrestling related. Actually, most of them aren't. But Stone Cold's so entertaining. He's so damn entertaining with everything he does. Even if he's talking to his friend Ted, or if he's talking about killing a fly in his backyard, which he has done from time to time, it's so fucking funny. The guy is great at entertaining an audience. I mean, we're talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin here, but both his Unleashed show, the family-friendly show, drops on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Podcast One. Free cheap plug for you, Stone Cold. I listened to that show. I listened to Talk is Jericho, which you mentioned. I listened to that on Wednesdays and Fridays. Jericho again. Even the non-wrestling interviews I find fascinating, because Jericho is that great of a host that I feel myself compelled to listen to every single episode. I have yet to miss an episode yet. I did listen to The Ross Report since it started for about a year and a half, and then I kind of fell out of it just because I was listening to way too many podcasts at one time. So on Wednesdays, I used to listen to Talk is Jericho, The Ross Report, and Sam Roberts' podcast. And that was like 5 hours in one. And of course, I wouldn't sit there and listen to it every single second doing nothing else. I would walk or write an article, and I would listen to those podcasts, but I was like, this is way too much. So I stopped listening to the Ross Report and to Sam Roberts' podcast. I'll listen to clips every now and then, but I strictly listen to Stone Cold Show, Jericho Show, and also Solo Monster Sounds Up, which I've talked about before. He's a great dude. I met him in person about a year ago. His podcast is great. It drops on Sundays on Podbean, his website, the App Store, iTunes, whatever. So check out those podcasts if you haven't already. Next couple questions, still from YouTube. Like I said, we got a lot of questions here today, so we'll probably go over the hour mark, which is fine. Like I said, nothing to do today. Memorial Day, got some rainy weather, just excited for Raw, trying to kill some time before Raw tonight. Jose K, his question was, who do you give the best chance to win Money in the Bank briefcase to, from out of all the participants so far, in order from most likely to least likely? So from most likely to least likely, Dean Ambrose, which might surprise some people, and I'll explain why in a second. Dean Ambrose, Kevin Owens, Cesaro, Sami Zayn, Chris Jericho, and Alberto Del Rio. Del Rio has no chance. I'll talk about him qualifying in a second. Someone else asked me about that. But I think he's a fine participant. Jericho would be cool, not really expecting it, but it would not be an awful situation for him to win. Zayn, Cesaro. Zayn has less of a chance, but I feel like he could still win, surprisingly. Cesaro has a pretty big chance. Owens and Ambrose are the top two favorites for most people, and a lot of people are going with Owens, which I would not be opposed to. If anything, I would love to see that. I'm going with Dean Ambrose as the most likely, because I feel like, especially with right now being like, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins as the two prominent figures in the WWE title picture right now, and JBL mentioning ad nauseum on Monday about how if he cashes in that same night on his former Shield members, it would be the perfect story to tell. So that would be pretty cool. Again, it wouldn't be against him winning, or basically anyone other than Del Rio. I'm fine with anyone winning but Del Rio out of the current crop of participants. But I feel like Ambrose is the most likely. And Owens is a close second to me. But all these guys, by and large, have an equal chance of winning. And that's why I cannot wait for this match. That and the fact that not only is the outcome exciting and unpredictable, but the match itself should be phenomenal. And I know Styles is not yet in it, so I can't really say that. Maybe just stellar. I'll use that word instead. No pun intended. In the brand split, should one of the IC or US titles be elevated to higher ranks, or should they split up the WWE title into two? A lot of questions on this too. Should they bring back the World Heavyweight Championship or make the IC title the top title on SmackDown? I'll probably be writing an article about this, hopefully on Wednesday or Thursday for Bleacher Report. Probably Thursday on my birthday, June 2nd. If you want to send in any money or cards, I'm just kidding. Please don't do that. But anyway, so should they elevate the IC title to SmackDown as their top title or bring back the World Heavyweight Championship? I would say bring back the World Heavyweight Championship, just because you can make that IC title really mean something as the top title on SmackDown, and arguably it already is the top title on SmackDown. It's been defended in the main event of the show for the past couple of months. The IC title combatants usually take the headlining spot of the show, the main event spot of the show, so it's really not that much different. But then at the same time, you could always make the champion make appearances on SmackDown and have them transition from both brands. But then the SmackDown guys aren't really fighting for a world championship shot. And John brought this up to me. Then how would you make this? If, let's say a SmackDown guy is feuding for the World Heavyweight Championship against a champion, who, regardless of whether he's on Raw or SmackDown, how can the challenger from SmackDown appear on Raw, which shouldn't happen? They should not make an exception for that. So this is like kind of the gripe that I have with it, with this idea that we should only have one world championship. How can you have the SmackDown challenger appear on Raw to hype up the match of the pay-per-view if he's on SmackDown? You know what I mean? So that's why I would just have two separate titles. One world championship for SmackDown, another for WWE's Raw. The WWE title for Raw. But again, though, and I know it's more prestigious if you have one world championship, but if they do bring back the World Heavyweight Championship, I'm not saying it's all going to be peachy and beautiful and perfect. They need to make that belt mean something. In its final years, that belt was as prestigious as the belt I'm wearing across my waist right now. It was worthless. Fucking worthless. Kicking off pay-per-views. You had fucking Jack Swagger parading around with it. It meant nothing. Was it cool when Del Rio won it? Was it, or rather, when Ziggler won it? When Christian won it? When so-and-so won it? Absolutely. It was fucking awesome. But the belt did not mean nearly as much as it should have, and one stayed many years earlier. So, again, I would not be against the idea of making the US, or preferably the IC title, the top title on SmackDown. Again, I'm making a whole article about it, why I'm making a case for that exact proposition this coming week on Bleacher Report, but I just don't know if it's as plausible. So, if they don't bring back the World Championship, they should make the IC title the top title of SmackDown. That's why I'm writing that article. But if they are bringing back the World Championship, I would much rather be in favor of that, just so everyone can get a reign as World Champion. Not everyone can have a trophy, but it just makes more sense that way to have SmackDown having their own top world championship as opposed to going to Raw and challenging for it, which would make, again, no sense. You would have to wait a whole year before going back to Raw to go for the world championship. So KO or Dean or Cesaro, whoever ends up on SmackDown, can't get a world championship shot. You know what I mean? So we'll see. But I'd be all in favor of either option, even though each of them had their respective gripes. Mark S. has got a couple questions here from Facebook. First one being, who do you think the final entry in the Money in the Bank ladder match will be? Who would you like to see it be? And do you think the right people have qualified? Should Dolph Ziggler and AJ Styles have been in the match? And who do you think will win? So, multi-fire question here. A lot of things to talk about. But I already answered pretty much half of the question already. Who do I want to win? KO. Who do I think will win? Ambrose or KO. Who should the final person be? We'll find out more tonight on Raw. I would not be surprised if it's John Cena, since technically the last time we saw him, he was feuding with Del Rio, and Del Rio's already in the match. So it could be John Cena. I do not want to see John Cena win, but it would be okay if he's in it. And what do I feel like? How do I feel about the people that have qualified so far? Should Styles be in it? I'm happy if Styles isn't in it, just because as long as they have a bigger plan in place. If he's on that kickoff show, which I don't think he would be, against Baron Corbin, then it's a waste that he's not in the match over Del Rio. But I feel like they have bigger plans for him, hence why he's not in it. Otherwise, why would he not be in it and then Del Rio is? So I'm sure they have another bigger plan in place for him come Money in the Bank. Hopefully, anyway. That's the hope. That's the hope. And then with Dolph Ziggler, I'm kind of fine that he's not in it. I would much rather take the current crop of people that are in it over him. I would rather have him be in the match over Del Rio, but it's like, pick your poison. It's not really that big of a difference. I like Dolph Ziggler, but I do not give two shits about the guy. So I don't fucking care. So we'll see how that plays out in the weeks to come. But I'm completely fine with Ziggler not being a part of it. He's already been in a million ladder matches, a million Money in the Bank ladder matches. Styles, hopefully, I'd be disappointed if he does something even worse off of the pay-per-view, but if they have bigger plans in place for him, I'm completely content with him not being in the Money in the Bank ladder match. His next question, what do you think of the idea now that Charlotte has got rid of Ric Flair, that Ric Flair ends up managing Summer Rae and Summer Rae meets Charlotte down the line for the women's title? No thanks. I do not want this whole split to be about Ric Flair. I'm hearing rumors that it will be, unfortunately, but just get rid of Ric Flair. Either keep him around or get rid of him off of TV for good. Or, in a different role, not managing someone else to feud with Charlotte. And then Summer Rae would be an afterthought anyway, as she usually is. If she was being managed by Ric Flair, it would be all about Ric Flair. Charlotte was the only exception because they're related. Summer Rae would be like Charlotte 2.0. Like, why would I fucking care to see that? I like Summer Rae, but she's not that good to justify getting that kind of push. So I do not want to see Ric Flair, unless it's someone super great, which I don't expect anyone else on the roster to fill that void, fittingly, I guess. Then Ric Flair should not be brought back to manage someone else to rival his daughter. Just keep him with her in that case. That makes no sense. His next question, do you see any major changes for SmackDown when the brand split occurs? What do you think of the brand split idea itself? Any changes for the Blue brand? Hopefully, in terms of commentary, getting Byron Saxton the hell off the show, or bringing up Corey Graves, or keeping Mauro Ranallo on commentary, of course, but bringing up Corey Graves, or I was going to say Rich Brennan, but he's gone, or Tom Phillips, or something. We have to have some sort of different voice. Byron Saxton is fine on Raw. I don't like him at all, but I'd rather relegate him to Raw and then not appear on SmackDown, or vice versa. Do not have him on both shows. If you want to have separate commentary teams and separate referee crews and separate rosters, you need to have separate commentary teams too. Do not have the one person go from show to show. That makes no sense in storyline fashion. But anyway, other than that, change the commentary team up a little bit for both shows. Change the look of SmackDown. I'm not saying bring back the fist, but what I'm saying is that you need to have different aesthetics to each show. When we had Raw and then when we had SmackDown, they felt like two separate shows. And you have different theme songs for both shows. You have different graphics, but it's the same HD look that we've had for almost over 8.5 years at this point. They debuted in January of 2008. The HD look is amazing. I'm not complaining. I'm not saying go back to the old shitty version, but I'm saying that we have the same set for both shows. No real major setup, kind of the same thing. So just change up. You can keep Raw the way it is, just change up SmackDown. Or the other way around. You have to make both shows feel as different as possible. SmackDown needs to feel like an alternative to Raw. And arguably it has for the past couple of months. But aesthetically speaking, they need to change up the show as much as possible and make it feel like a real alternative to Raw. Like, oh, I hate Raw. I don't like the way it's set up. Let me watch SmackDown. Oh, this feels different. That's what we need more of. Kind of back what we used to have many years ago in WWE. His next question. Some reviewers are saying that wrestlers from other wrestling companies that have joined WWE recently should be doing better. For example, this week TM61 lost their debut match in NXT, and should the club and AJ Styles have won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, or is the wrestling talent in WWE, is that the best? What is your argument? What is your view on this argument? So, kind of a confusing question, but I think I know what you mean. So, are they mishandling a lot of these talents? AJ Styles, I know he just lost at WrestleMania in 2 back-to-back pay-per-views, but look who he faced. He lost to Chris Jericho WrestleMania, and he lost to Roman Reigns in the main event of 2 outstanding pay-per-view matches. That's not losing, people. I do not want to hear one person say he got buried. I know a lot of people don't like Roman Reigns, but Styles did not get buried at Extreme Rules or Payback. He shouldn't have lost clean, but he's been doing a hell of a lot better than I thought he would. Not because I didn't think Styles couldn't do well, but rather I didn't think he would do well, just because look at the company's track record with former TNA stars, and considering, AJ may or may not have been the former face of TNA, their rival promotion for many years, rival promotion, but you know what I mean, that I thought they would not bury him, but not just kind of relegate him to a mid-card role, and thankfully that has been anything but the case. The guy just main evented 2 back-to-back pay-per-views, albeit in losing fashion, but he had great showings in defeat nevertheless. TM61, they had a great match in NXT against Gargano and Ciampa, so I don't know who the hell you're talking about in terms of some reviewers, but saying, oh, they got buried, they should be doing better. It's one match. If people are complaining that they lost their first match in NXT, it's not fucking like when Sting lost his first match. Yes, that was a big deal because it's fucking Sting. These guys are unknowns from Australia. It's all right if they lose their first match to a great team in Gargano and Ciampa. And again, it's not like they got buried. It's not like the match was over in 2 minutes. I thought it would be, but rather they surprised me by giving us a full-on 8 to 10 minute match filled with great wrestling, and Ciampa and Gargano showed him respect afterwards anyway. That put them over, probably more so than a win would have. So I thought it was great, and I would keep all of those people, Styles, the Club, which I'll get to in a second, TM61, keep all of them on your radar. The Club, I would argue, yes, they have been booked a bit haphazardly in the last couple of weeks, losing when they shouldn't have had to. But other than that, I mean, I think by and large, WWE has done well by a lot of the guys that they have signed the last couple of months in NXT and WWE respectively. Next question of his, do you think the Shining Stars should turn heel or face? My viewpoint is that they currently have a lot of energy behind being a face presently with a great tag team wrestling. And if they turn heel, it will be very difficult for them to turn face in the future if it doesn't work out. Maybe they even get a manager. Would you make them a face or heel tag team? Just the whole gimmick sucks. Face, heel, tweener, doesn't matter. The people just don't fucking care. Begging people to take a vacation in Puerto Rico makes them baby faces, but being booked like heels, no one gives a shit. Even if they wore baby faces, again, no one cares, because the gimmick sucks. And I like both Primo and Epico. It's a lot better than the Matadors, which I've talked about before. It's a lot better than the Matadors. That's the only real saving grace of this entire repackaging of those guys. But the gimmick itself sucks. Next question. Watching the team of TM61 this week in NXT, they immediately gave me the impression that they should turn heel. Should they stay face or turn heel? Doesn't matter. I mean, right now they're fine as baby faces, I guess. I mean, probably turn heel. I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter, but if you have the Hype Bros, American Alpha, and Gargano and Ciampa, that's 3 babyface tag teams right in there. And then you don't really have many heel tag teams. I mean, we have the Revival, and then Blake and Murphy just broke up. So probably turn them heel, which is fine. I mean, they immediately give the impression to you that they should turn heel, probably because they thought they would. I thought they would lose and then attack Gargano and Ciampa afterwards. It didn't happen, so maybe they turn them heel down the line, but I'd be fine with that. I'm not saying it's obvious, but we have 3 babyface tag teams, 1 heel tag team. Turn those guys heel, and I feel like it balances out very easily, very nicely. And his last question here, what do you think about Curtis Axel? What if he left the Social Outcasts in the future, and then he runs the gimmick that he's better than perfect, that he has the perfect plex, gets new entrance music, yet does underhanded things to win matches? He is still a very good wrestler. You know what? That sounds oddly, vaguely familiar for some reason. It sounds a lot like 2013. A lot like 2013 when he used his daddy's finisher, a remix of his daddy's entrance music, still had really good matches, and still, no one gave a fuck. I mean, people liked the idea that he was getting repackaged, but I've said this for years, but as soon as he lost a million matches to CM Punk, people didn't care. That was the kiss of death for Curtis Axel in WWE. That and the fact that his reign as IC champion was forgettable as all hell. It went for like 5-6 months and people didn't even remember it happened because, I don't know, it was just bizarre. But anyway, I think all hope is lost for Curtis Axel as a singles guy. He's more entertaining in the Outcast than he is on his own. I like Axel, but if the Outcasts ever break up and he's back on his own again, expect him to get his walking papers. And the fact that he's a second generation star means nothing. He could walk on his own, a lot like Cody Rhodes, a lot like Ted DiBiase, all those guys, because they knew they weren't going to get cut because of their family lineage, but they also knew they weren't going to get above a certain level or really get anywhere in their current status. So in their status at the time in which they left. But yeah, no, it sounds a lot like 2013 to me is what you're pitching, so I would say no to that, because it didn't work out the first time, so why would it work out again the second time? Andre G from Facebook, his question was, do you think that WWE could limit their pay-per-views to 6 every year and have every other months be like house shows like they did for Roadblock, Beast in the East, etc.? It would be like the in-your-house shows they did back in the early 90s. I like the idea. 6 might be pushing it. They make a lot of money off those pay-per-views. I know we have the network now, but they also have to sign contracts and stuff. Let me just square up here. But as much as I would want to see 6 pay-per-views a year, it's not happening. That is way too unrealistic. Someone mentioned that a couple weeks ago. Maybe you knock it down like 12 as opposed to 14. That's realistic. That could happen. I would also be in favor of that. Knocking it down to 6 is a little much. Maybe even 7 I would be fine with, but 6 and doing the pay-per-view specials every other month, like the In Your House shit, then why not just make it a pay-per-view at that point? I know it's probably 2.5 hours, but I don't know. I don't think that's realistic. I think less is more. I absolutely agree, but it's not happening at all, I would imagine. I don't think they can do something like a 6 pay-per-view schedule again like they did in the 80s and maybe even early 90s. Just because, even like with the In Your House shows, the pay-per-views were pretty much every month, every other month. Not even every other month, but they just had they had them pretty much every month. They just weren't annual. They weren't like Backlash and Judgment Day and SummerSlam. Oh, they had SummerSlam and shit, but they had the In Your House pay-per-views in between the big four. But way too unrealistic, but I'd be totally fine with them cutting down the pay-per-views, bottom line. Second question, with the brand split happening, should exclusive pay-per-views be brought back too? No. Have I heard rumors of that happening? I have heard rumors of that happening. Would it be the worst thing? No, but at the same time, I feel like when you had pay-per-view exclusive shows, brand exclusive shows, they sucked. That's what they did away with them in 2007. The brand split died in 2011. They did away with the brand exclusive shows in 2007. So it's not like the brand split died and then they went back to doing, brand shared pay-per-views. If you had brand shared pay-per-views, if you had brand exclusive pay-per-views, we would be seeing like Heath Slater versus fucking Curtis Axel in the first 3 matches. I mean, you could barely fill out a 3-hour episode of Raw with half the roster that they currently have, unless they bring up more. Even with NXT guys, they're going to struggle to fill 3 hours with just one roster. Much less 3 hours than a pay-per-view. And that's not a case like, oh, just give the matches more time. I don't see that happening either. More than like 10. Each match would have to go like fucking 20 minutes. And that's way too long for like an undercard match. For the most part. So, yeah, no. I'm not in favor of that at all. Bringing back exclusive pay-per-views. I wouldn't complain, but I would just much rather have them do the pay-per-views like they are now. Again, maybe less pay-per-views, but having like No Mercy be the SmackDown show again, like that's a little much just because it's going to be Jobber City in the undercard. You would have to know that for a fact. If and when Roman Reigns turns heel, should the Usos turn too? I've always said no because I feel like they are better baby faces, and I've never hated the Usos, but at Extreme Rules, I was booing that shit out of them just like everybody else. The second most heat of the night, right next to Roman Reigns, by far, not even close. Like I said last week, the heat for all those guys, the Usos and Reigns, was off the charts. So, yeah, I mean, there's other ways they could do that. They could, pair those guys together as a heel faction. I would love to see that, and I think the Usos are in desperate need of a character change. Maybe they could do that, but like I said, there's other ways of changing up their characters, that does not require turning them heel. But I feel like at this point, that's the only way to do it. Especially if Reigns goes heel, you got to turn the Usos too. You could have them be like a pack of hyenas and whatever else. I feel like they could do well as heels. I know they didn't initially when they came into WWE back in 2010. They were heels for a while. No one gave a shit about them. But beyond that, if they were booked properly and given a certain character, kind of like what they are now, just facing heel or facing baby faces instead of heels, and aligning themselves with the biggest heel in the company, hopefully Roman Reigns, I feel like they would be just fine. On to his next question. Depends on how long they keep Charlotte and Dana Brooke together, but should Emma join them upon a return or come back as a babyface? I mean, I don't know if they're going to be together that long. I could see Dana, if they have a women's Money in the Bank ladder match, I could see her winning the briefcase and splitting up the two before you could even call them a tag team. But I'd bring Emma back as a heel just because she was doing the best work of her career, which is not saying much. She's been around only for a few years, but she was doing phenomenal work as a heel before she got hurt. So why ruin that? I mean, she's going to be a babyface before long again anyway. I feel like you can go back to doing the whole Emma dance, and as long as it's booked properly, I feel like it could get over. Especially after earning the respect of the fans with the whole heel shtick. But when she comes back, she could be a babyface, and then she could feud with Dana after saying that Dana ditched her for Charlotte. You could do that whole storyline, but I would much rather just keep Emma as a heel for the time being because she's such a good heel. She put so much effort, so much time and hard work into getting that current persona over before she got hurt that it'd really just go to waste if she came back as a face. So I'd bring her back as a heel, but I wouldn't be opposed to her coming back as a babyface just if she's going to feud with Dana. That makes the most storyline sense. At Reborn again, moving now to the Twitter questions. We got a whole page and a half of questions left, so I won't try to, we might go an hour and a half today, but again, if you guys send in less questions, like 2 to 3 questions is perfect. Any more than that, I cannot guarantee I'm going to use every question because a lot of these are repeats. And I do say the repeats, but I'll say them quickly and I won't go on a whole 10-minute tangent again, but anyway, guys, at Reborn again, John's question was, Do you think the brand split will lead to any titles being brought back, i.e. the European, TV, Cruiserweight, etc.? I don't think so. Other than the World Heavyweight Championship, I don't think so. We do not need more championships. Maybe with the brand split, I've always said less is more. If you have the current roster and everyone has a fucking title, like you get a title, everybody gets a title, to quote Oprah. But then what do they really mean? I mean, with less championships, there's less titles to vie for. I understand that, but it makes them feel more prestigious. I feel right now, with all the titles they currently have, I am perfectly fine with that amount of champions. We have a WWE champion, hopefully a world champion. IC, mid-card for Raw and SmackDown. Women's tag team, that's it. I don't want to see them split up the tag team. I don't want to see them split up the women's championship. They shouldn't need to. The tag team the tag team champs should be able to appear on both shows. Same thing with the women's championship. As far as the titles you mentioned, European, TV, Cruiserweight, really no need. If anything, the only place I would say to bring in a mid-card title would be NXT. I feel like you don't have a large roster down there, but you do have enough talent with things that, they don't really have much to do other than go for the main championship, the NXT title. So I would institute like a TV title for NXT, but beyond that, I don't think we need maybe a Cruiserweight with a new Cruiserweight show coming back. I've heard rumors of a Cruiserweight Championship being brought back for the show. That would be all right. I don't know where it would be defended, on Raw, SmackDown, whatever. But European TV, fucking hardcore, would it be cool? Yeah, I'd mark out if I saw it, but I wouldn't be like, I don't think it's really necessary in the long term. If anything, I will say this, I would be completely fine to go with the idea that people have been pitching for years. When Cesaro first had the title, and then later Rusev, and now he has it back again, so we could see it happen. If they ditched the U.S. Championship and brought back the European title. If only for during Rusev's reign as champion. Which I think would be cool. It's not like you could do it when Cena was champion, because that was the whole point of the U.S. Open, have the U.S. Championship. But when Rusev is champion, he hails from Europe, bring back the European title. I feel like it makes the most sense. And I don't know why they didn't do it the first two times with him or Cesaro back in 2012, but nevertheless, I feel like it would be a great idea to do that. So I wouldn't bring it back on its own, but if you do redo the U.S. Championship as the European title, albeit for a temporary period of time, I'd be totally in favor of that. I think it'd be cool. And John's second question, do you think a change or changes are needed to the Raw broadcast team? If so, what changes would you make? Like I said, I would get rid of Byron. I do not like Byron on Raw, SmackDown, whatever. He's not bad. He's just really bland. I just don't care. Raw commentary could be worse. If it was a perfect world, I would just have the Raw commentary team be just Cole and JBL. I mean, they were money together over on SmackDown about 10 years ago. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd have Mauro Ranallo on Raw calling the action with Jim Ross, but this is not a perfect world. We're living in a logical world here, which WWE is not, but you know what I mean. If I was going to make any realistic changes to the broadcast team on Raw, I would just have it be Cole and JBL. I don't even know how realistic that is, because they've been doing three-man booths for a while now, for the past 5 years. So I don't think that's happening either. But a Cole and JBL announce booth with just them two would be completely fine. So I'd be fine with that. But if anything, with the whole brand split happening, I'd be fine with, Corey Graves being brought up to SmackDown, or Raw, and Mauro Ranallo being moved to Raw and taking over Cole's spot, which I think is going to happen eventually anyway. Maybe not this soon, but hopefully soon. But yeah, realistic, I would just get rid of Byron. Put him on, how the hell is he commentating on Raw and SmackDown, but Tom Phillips isn't? How is Tom Phillips? I mean, he's doing commentary in NXT now, but I think Phillips is very underrated. He's very, very good. And I think he could be on Raw or SmackDown right now instead of Byron. Hopefully, he takes his spot eventually. At the Wrestle Guys, got a couple questions here. What do you think Raw has to do in order to make 3 hours work after the draft? They could do a bunch of things. I mean, they could make the first hour Cruiserweight division oriented, which has been rumored for years now, dating back to when Raw first went 3 hours 3 years ago. 4 years ago. Oh my God, it feels like a fucking eternity. But anyway, so they could do that. They could just give us longer matches. This is all in a perfect world. Again, I expect WWE to do none of this. But instead of having Roman appear in 5 segments on the show, which I'm sure they're going to do anyway, and they need to have a larger roster than SmackDown. I mean, they don't have to have more star power than SmackDown. They might need to have a bigger roster just because SmackDown's 2 hours and Raw's 3. SmackDown cannot be 3 hours. Someone brought that up to me last week. Oh, they need to be... No. I'd shoot myself. You cannot have SmackDown be 3 hours. Raw is enough. And I know that automatically gives the feeling that Raw is better. Okay, I'll deal with that. I don't give a fuck about equality here. in that respect. I will deal with Raw being better than SmackDown as long as SmackDown stays 2 hours. If SmackDown was 3 hours, I'm done with SmackDown. 2 hours is enough. Even if it was in an hour. If it was in an hour-long show, I would be completely content with that. Anyway, so I would either have Raw. I would either give Raw a bigger roster. I would have the first hour be NXT oriented or Cruiserweight division oriented, or you need to do something to kill time. You can't do the same formula where people are appearing on the show 2 or 3 times in the same night. That's way too much. You can't do that. So, again, I would just have either longer matches or make that first hour or one of the hours, kind of like a pre-show, or give the NXT people some time, or the Cruiserweight division some time, the new Cruiserweight Classic show coming up. So yeah, hopefully they do something along those lines as opposed to having people appear 10 times in the same evening. That's going to get very old very quickly. His second question, which superstars do you think will benefit most from the draft? The mid-card, guys like Tyler Breeze, especially the brand split. I think no one was happier by the news of the brand split than Tyler Breeze. He's like, yes, I could finally stop teaming with Fandango. Hopefully we get split up in the draft. I can only imagine that happening after the news broke on Wednesday. But anyway, Breeze, Zack Ryder, Baron Corbin, Apollo Crews especially. The guy's been floundering ever since he showed up in the main roster. He's not even really been doing anything of note. So giving him some direction on the SmackDown brand or in the mid card or whatever would be a huge step in the right direction for him. So Crews, maybe even guys like Ziggler. I'm not saying they're going to become world champion again, but Ziggler. I'm trying to think of people that I thought could be world champion but aren't right now. I mean, maybe Miz. I mean, he could be another top guy on the SmackDown brand. He was never really on SmackDown for any long period of time. He was earlier on in his career. But when he got hot as a single star, he was never really on SmackDown at all. The brand split ended before that could happen. So they brought him over to SmackDown as a top guy, as a world champion. I could see that happening again. So, yeah, again, Ziggler, Miz, Crews, some of the NXT guys, they get called up to SmackDown immediately. There's a couple different options. And I'd be totally fine with that, with them doing that with guys like Breeze and Ryder and giving them more TV time and be able to more character development. Hopefully, more TV time does not always mean more character development, but it could do these guys wonders to have more TV time and more development and whatever. So I think they're going to be the ones that benefit, the biggest beneficiaries from the drafts, overall. Guys like him, Ziggler, maybe even a Miz, time will tell. And his third question here, keep or erase Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker from WrestleMania 25 or Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker from WrestleMania 26. This to me is a no-brainer because if you get rid of Taker and Michaels from WrestleMania 25, then the second one doesn't happen, or at least it's not as meaningful because the whole story of that second match was the fact that it was a rematch from the year before. And if we're going to go with my answer here and you erase the second match, you erase the sequel from WrestleMania 26, then Shawn Michaels isn't retired. So that to me is a no-brainer. That's probably a cop-out answer, but it's a real answer, so I'm going to go with that. At E1, 3A's got a couple questions here. First one being better mid-card, WWF from the early 2000s or early 01, or SmackDown late 02, early 03. Great question. Late 02, early 03. Better mid-card. Are we talking like the SmackDown 6 here for SmackDown? Because I would say those guys weren't really mid-card. They were in the tag team division. That's a great question. Because I'm thinking easily SmackDown, but then I think of late 2000, early 01. You have Jericho, Benoit, Eddie, Angle, and that's 4 people off the bat right there. All future world champions. And that's not even including all the other people that in the mid-card at that time. So I'd got to go with those guys. I mean, the SmackDown 6 was great and all, and the SmackDown did have a great roster in late 02, early 03, and a great tag team division, but that mid-card scene in 2000, early 01 was untouchable, so easily the former choice. The second question, should the IC title be the top title on SmackDown? I already talked about that before. How much do you keep up with WWE's newest DVD releases? I kind of, but not really. I mean, I won't buy them unless I have a real... Either one of two things. One, either they're on sale for like a decent amount of money or really low. Or two, I really want to watch the DVD. Like I bought the Warrior DVDs because those are great. I'm not going to buy... God, I don't even know. What else do they have out right now? I might get the Dudley Boys DVD at some point. That looks like it's a great DVD. But beyond that, like the greatest U.S. championship matches in history, I really don't have a strong desire to get that DVD. So I'm not going to buy everyone, but I do pay attention to them. I know when they're coming out and stuff. The most recent one I got, I'll show you right here. I got this on sale a couple weeks ago. Let me see here. I got to pull it up from the DVD library. And I'm a huge DVD collector. I know a lot of the shit's on the network, but I got this on sale. They had a huge sale for like $5. The best pay-per-view matches of 2015. Again, they're all on the network, but 2015 was my favorite year in wrestling up to this point. Maybe 2016 will beat it. Who knows? But this had a lot of great pay-per-view matches on, and I'm excited to watch this back. I've already seen a lot of these in the last couple of months and watching these pay-per-views back on the network and shit, but it's still a great compilation of matches from my favorite year in wrestling. So, yeah, I do keep up with the DVD releases. I won't buy every single one, but if they're on a decent price and they've got a good match listing or a great documentary, then I'll certainly dish out some cash for a wise investment like a good DVD like that. Which Money in the Bank cash-in moment has aged well the most? I feel like everyone that was great has really stayed great. Like when Edge cashed in, or RVD, or even Edge the second time, or even Punk both times. Both were great. So it's not like it started out. I guess are you asking that, when it happened, like I didn't care, but it aged very well? Like I feel like that's not the case with any cash-in. I feel like that's not the case with no pun intended, briefcase, whatever. I feel like every great cash-in has stayed great, and any bad cash-in, like Sheamus cashing in or Swagger cashing in. I mean, the cash wasn't that bad, but he was a terrible champion. I'm trying to think. Any great cash-in, which most of them have been great, have pretty much stayed the same. None of them have really gotten greater, in my opinion. They've all pretty much stayed the same, or not like, oh, that was a decent cash-in over time. It's like, oh, it got better. Oh, it's actually a lot better than I thought it was. That hasn't really been the case for me at all. Next question, Matt Swagzio. Are you disappointed with Alberto Del Rio beating the Money in the Bank ladder match? Disappointed? A little. Surprised? No. I would rather have Styles in there or even Ziggler over Del Rio, but it's not the worst possible choice. He is a former world champion. He's a former Money in the Bank winner, and he's a great worker. I do not care about Del Rio. I don't want to see him win. I don't think he will win. But he's not an awful choice for the match because he could do great things in the match. He's a filler opponent. I know I said on Monday, this is the perfect lineup, and then Del Rio qualifies in SmackDown. I honestly would have rather had Ryder qualify for the match. I would have rather had Zack Ryder in Money in the Bank over Del Rio because I feel like I'm more invested in him tenfold than I am Alberto Del Rio. Not that he's a better worker and he's more of a loser than Del Rio, but at least he's had something going for him recently. Del Rio hasn't been relevant in ages. Ever since he came back and won the U.S. title his first night back, ever since then he's been an afterthought. Zack Ryder at least won the IC title. He had a great one-day reign as champion, had a big win at WrestleMania. He's been over. People like him. He's had this Cinderella story of sorts. He's almost like WWE's new ultimate underdog. So I would rather see him in the Money in the Bank ladder match, which I don't think he's ever been in one before, over Del Rio again. But that's neither here nor there. Unless Ryder gets in tonight via Battle Royal or something, that's not happening. But was I pissed that Del Rio got in? No, but I feel like there were better options. Next question of his, with Rusev feuding with Titus O'Neil now, where does this leave John Cena, who is rumored to be feuding with Rusev again? It was never rumored. That was believed by the fans. I don't think I read one report that said Cena was coming back to feud with Rusev for the title. That was pure speculation. We'll find out tonight. Maybe he beats Rusev on Memorial Day for the U.S. title. Gets the Cena treatment. Cena wins, LOL, and we have a new U.S. champion on Memorial Day. Who knows? But I don't think so, just because, like you said, O'Neil looks like he's next in line for a title shot. So where does this leave John Cena? Like I said earlier, I could see him qualifying for Money in the Bank tonight. I could see him feuding with Del Rio again. God, I hope not, but I could see that happening. I could see him going back after the World Championship. Not in the immediate future, but down the line, sure. There's a couple different options for Cena. I don't think the U.S. title was the only option. He could feud with Miz again. Again, not ideal, but it could happen. Who knows? And Cena's IC champion is possible. He's never been IC champion before, and because he has not been IC champion, he's not a Triple Crown champion either. So I would much rather see him as Intercontinental champion than U.S. champion at this point in time, just to give Rusev a break, and he doesn't get the Cena treatment 2 years in a row as U.S. champion. His next question, are there any negatives of a brand split? I mean, there's multiple. Like I said, it's not all peachy, it's not all perfect. There were a couple reasons why I was kind of against the idea a couple months ago. I've always been in favor of a brand split. It's just that Raw being 3 hours long is a huge deal. And that I don't know how they're going to spread out the roster enough to make those 3 hours feel worth watching with half the roster cut in half. But that's the biggest gripe, I feel. That's my biggest gripe or biggest negative with the current brand split. Beyond that, there's not many. I mean, people are going to get more time. It's going to make SmackDown relevant again. There's a lot of positives. The positives outweigh the negatives by far. But I would be lying if I said the brand split. The idea of a brand split's perfect right now. The current roster that we have and people coming back from injury, who knows? But there are negatives, just not nearly as many as there are positives, in my opinion. At Sean Markistic, push, repackage, release Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Cesaro. I feel like I've answered this before. This is not really hard or easy just because it's very interchangeable, but I would push Sami Zayn, repackage Owens into a babyface, is so popular, and get rid of Cesaro. I feel like Zayn has more potential to be a world champion at this point than Cesaro because he's been here longer, Cesaro. So, yeah, push Zayn, repackage Owens, release Cesaro. No real rhyme or reason other than the reasons I just mentioned, just because they're all amazing, and I want to get rid of any one of them or change any one of them right now. 3 matches you see happening at SummerSlam. I wrote a whole article about this for Hidden Remote last week, so check it out for my full 7 matches I could see happening at SummerSlam. But the 3 off the bat that seem the most obvious to me, Reigns and Cena for the championship. No storyline reason, but it's been rumored for a long time, even as far back as WrestleMania, that we were supposed to get Reigns and Cena. I don't think that was ever the plan. It might have been an option. I feel like we were going to get Cena and Taker. The plan was always to do Triple H and Roman Reigns, but anyway, I think we are getting Cena and Roman at SummerSlam in Brooklyn for the title. I could see Seth Rollins and Triple H. Might be a little early, but based off what we saw the last couple of weeks, I could see that match happening at SummerSlam. And Charlotte versus Sasha Banks for the Women's Championship. So 3 matches I could see happening. For the other 4, check out the article from hiddenremote.com now. Cheap plug. And next question here of his. Who will be the last person to qualify for the Money in the Bank ladder match? Like I said, it could be John Cena. Kalisto wouldn't be bad. He's no longer in the U.S. title picture. He lost the belt at Extreme Rules. He lost the rematch on SmackDown. So I could see him being in Money in the Bank, especially after a showing at TLC. So that'd be pretty cool. Not likely, but it's possible. So Kalisto, John Cena. Maybe Styles gets in via a last chance battle royale. That's a possibility, right? We'll find out more tonight. So this isn't really... I mean, it's a timely question, but if you're watching this after Raw, you already know better than I would. So I could see Cena or whoever else. To those watching before Raw, anyway. At RJ_Marso, my brother, his question was, which superstar should SmackDown target in the draft to make it even or greater than Raw? Great question. I know no one is happier about the brand split than RJ. I think RJ is on the same playing field in terms of being as excited for the brand split as I am. So I'm looking forward to it as much as he is. Anyway, to answer his question, and we did a whole mock draft, by the way, another cheap plug. We did a whole mock draft on Thursday, I think it was. For my website, nextairwrestling.net, we picked 20 teams / people apiece. He was SmackDown, I was Raw. We had our own pay-per-view cards. Check it out on nextairwrestling.net right now. But anyway, to answer his question, which superstar should SmackDown target to make it feel even or greater than Raw? Like I said, John Cena. John Cena easily. It's going to get a lot of eyes on SmackDown. You cannot have Cena and Reigns on the same show. And maybe because of that, we don't get Reigns and Cena at SummerSlam. If that's the case, then oh well. I'm fine with that. But Cena has to be on SmackDown. You could have Roman on SmackDown, but I feel like they're trying to groom him to be the next guy. So Cena and all the people that basically RJ picked in his draft last week. Cesaro, Ambrose, maybe Rollins. I feel like Rollins is better on Raw because he's a top guy. So so is Cena, but I feel like Rollins is better suited on Raw. But SmackDown should be for guys like Kevin Owens, Dean Ambrose, Sami Zayn, Cesaro, etc., etc. So those guys I hope to see on SmackDown come the draft. At Cody Collier 37, who do you think should be the final superstar? I already answered that before. That's Scarlet One to finish it off here with their questions. A lot of questions, but most of these are pretty good ones. You remember the ECW One Night Stand 05 promo where Paul Heyman said that JBL was only WWE champion because Triple H did not work Tuesdays? Yes, I do remember that, and that was a great line, by the way. One of the most classic lines in the last 15 years. Love Paul Heyman. Who else wouldn't have been WWE champion if Triple H worked Tuesdays in the Ruthless Aggression era? That's a great question. I saw this great article on What Culture last week that said 10 people that would not have been champion had it not been for the brand split. And it was not just world champions. It was like U.S. champion, like Orlando Jordan was on there. JBL, I think, was number 1 with the WWE title reign that he had. But JBL would not have been WWE champion had it not been for Triple H working just Mondays. But let's see. Who was champion in the Ruthless Aggression era from 02 to 05? Let's see. We had Brock Lesnar. Who was going to be champion either way? We had Kurt Angle. We had... let's see, who else? Eddie? Would Eddie have been champion? I think so. I think so. Maybe not as likely, but I feel like Eddie still would have gotten that one world title reign. JBL definitely not, but I definitely think that Eddie probably would have risen to the top at some point and gotten that world championship push, regardless if Triple H was on SmackDown or not. But yeah, JBL, let me try to think. Fuck, man. I don't know. JBL is champion for most of '04. So before that was Eddie. Big Show probably not. Big Show probably would not have been WWE champion if Triple H was on SmackDown. Triple H, JBL, and that was pretty much it. I mean, those few years were occupied by a select few people. Lesnar, Big Show, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, and JBL. There might be one other person, but those are the people I remember being WWE champion for that 3-year period. That's crazy. Their next question. During Extreme Rules, JBL was really pushing Roman Reigns' booze as a sign of a megastar. Thoughts on that? So he was pushing the negative reaction as a sign that he was a megastar. Interesting. I did not hear that. I heard the boos because I was there. I didn't hear the reaction, though, from JBL. It's not JBL. It's all Vince. They want to, push him down. He's getting a reaction. That means people love him. No. I know. I guess it's better that he's getting booed than if he's not getting a reaction at all, of course. But they got to turn him heel. He's a better heel anyway. So why not just turn him heel? I know they're really, Vince is a hard-on for making him their next top babyface. But it's not worth it. The guy's a better heel. So I would just turn him heel and get it over with. Stop being, so stubborn, Vince. Next question. Where do you think the brand split will leave the current tag team and women's division? Like I said, they should keep the belts as one. Not a women's tag team title, but I'm saying one women's championship and one tag team title. We have a lot of tag teams, but not enough tag teams to justify having 2 tag team divisions. You cannot have 2 women's divisions. Again, I know we have a lot of talent, but that didn't work when they brought in the Divas title all those years ago. They had a Divas title for SmackDown, the women's title for Raw. That did not last long at all. That lasted maybe 2 years, and it was a fucking train wreck. So just have the champions appear in both brands. That's what I would do. Do not have 2 separate titles broken up again. They are fine the way they are right now, in my opinion. I forgot their question from previously, but their previous question before that one was, ironically, building off of the JBL question, when Seth returned on Raw, I noticed the commentary made no mention of his own positive reaction. Do you think that says something in relation to Roman Reigns' continued push? Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it says more about where they're going, the direction the story is taking, that they don't want Seth to go babyface, and maybe that's the direction they are taking. They don't want it to be more of a surprise. They're not going to mention. They don't want to make it obvious. Who knows? We won't find out come Money in the Bank, until Money in the Bank. But, yeah, I think it does say something about not only the direction of the current storylines, but also the continued Roman Reigns push, and that they want him to be as popular as possible. So saying that Seth is getting a bigger reaction than he is probably won't do too well for Reigns' stock as a top babyface in WWE. So I think that was definitely deliberate. They've been doing that for years, though. They have been definitely doing that for years. When Daniel Bryan would get bigger reactions than John Cena, they would never mention that was the case, for the most part. And John Cena by that point was more established. Roman Reigns is not yet established as a top guy, or at least not as the guy, as he likes to call himself. So that definitely was deliberate. They did not bring up Seth's positive reaction over Roman Reigns at Extreme Rules or on Monday's Raw. Keep, erase, or revise the main event scene in the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era, or the previous era, say 2011 to 2015? Great question, and I love questions like this that are not easy, but they're logical. Like with Sane, Cesaro, and Owens, like the whole, push, repackage, release. That's a little harder because they're all on the same playing field. This is a little different, and it's more opinion-based, depending on how much you love each era. But you're going to be surprised by my answer. And anyone knows that 2011 was my favorite year in wrestling, or was before 2015. So you would say, you think I would say keep that era. Actually, I'm going to erase that era. I would keep the main event scene, or erasing the era, where it's the main event scenes here. The main event scene from 2011 to 2015 was mostly John Cena on top and Randy Orton. Throw in, pepper in a little Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins, and that's pretty much it. So I would erase that main event scene. I mean, the Attitude Era was the same thing, but at least the main event scene was so much more exciting with Stone Cold and The Rock and Triple H, Undertaker, Kane. So I would keep the Attitude Era main event scene, erase the main event scene in 2011 to 2015, and then revise the main event scene from the Attitude Era. Yes, it was great for the most part on SmackDown, but on Raw, it was all Triple H. So I would give more people a chance. I would give Jericho a chance on Raw. I'd have Benoit's reign be a little bit longer. I'd have same thing with Shawn Michaels. So I would revise that. They had all the puzzle pieces in place, but they just not utilized them as well as they should have. Again, still a great time for wrestling, but Triple H in his reign of terror was just awful, and it did nobody else any favors on the roster. So I would revise that main event scene from 02 to 05, erase the main event scene from 2011 and 2015, and keep the main event scene from the Attitude Era. Final 2 questions. Have you seen the newest Table for 3 episode with Team Credgley, Mick Foley, with Edge and Christian? Yes, I have. I watched it that Wednesday, like literally right after it was released in the network. Really, really enjoyed it. Mick Foley is great anyway. Christian is great on his own. Edge is great on his own. You put those 3 guys together. And it just creates very entertaining TV. And I love the stuff they did when Foley was commissioner and shit. Like, that was some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. And when I watched Foley's documentary, the most recent one, For All Mankind, it came out a couple years ago. It's on the network. That was some of the funniest parts of that documentary, was when they were showing the clips of him with Edge and Christian as commissioner. So funny. So check out the episode if you haven't already. Going off of that, for the final question, today's holiday-themed episode of #AskGSM from @Scarlet1. In that Table for 3, Edge says that prior to WrestleMania 2000, he and Christian were supposed to break up until some jokes they made during guest commentary actually changed the plans to them winning the tag team titles instead. Have you ever heard of that before, and were you surprised? Yes, I was very surprised by that because I had not heard that before. That was news to me. And it's not like just because I hadn't heard it, it's not true, because it is true because they said it themselves. So obviously they're validating the rumor, but I don't even know if it was a rumor because, like I said, I had never heard that before. I don't know if that was common knowledge before they said it on the show, on the podcast, or the Table for 3 episode, but I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was really, really interesting. We would not have gotten all the skits that we did with them, Team Credgley, or still reeking of awesomeness, the 5-second pose, the greatest tag team in the last 20 years. We would not have gotten any of that stuff had they broken up when they did. I feel like Vince is the same now as he was then. That if something isn't getting over in time, I'm not saying they weren't over at that point, but they weren't special. Like, they had only been together for like a year at that point, from 98 to 99, right before 2000. And they were like, oh, they're not doing anything, let's break them up. Like, why would you do that? They're the hottest thing going. They can be the hottest thing going if you allow them to showcase their, if they allow them to showcase their charisma and whatever. You know what I get a similar comparison to? The New Day. I feel like if they broke them up, if they weren't working out as a babyface faction at start, when they were in the whole over-the-top babyface shtick and preaching and all that shit, I feel like the same thing happened. I feel like they probably would have broken them up and they would have floundered on their own. But because they were able to show their personalities a little bit more and develop their characters, a lot like Edge and Christian did, that's what made them the hottest act in the company, the latest, one of the greatest, if not the greatest tag team in several years, one of the greatest groups in several years. So I feel like it's a very similar situation 15 years later. But anyway, guys, that is it for #AskGSM for the Memorial Day episode. Thank you, as always, for sending in your questions. Almost 4 pages worth, just about 4 full pages worth. Like I said at the top of the episode, be sure going forward, you can send in as many questions as you want. This is not a rule going forward, but I do not know if I can answer every one of your questions if you send in over 5 or even 3 or so. Especially if they're in-depth questions. If they're like a quick question like, who do you see being the next Money in the Bank entrant? Like, that I can answer in 10 seconds. If it's an in-depth question, like a reflective question or retrospective question, or my thoughts on something, or to break this down, or to rank this and that, I can't spend too much time, I can't spend too much time on those questions just because it takes away from the other questions I get to answer. I feel like it's not fair to spend 20 minutes on one question and then 20 seconds on another. So in fairness to everybody, please limit your questions if you can. I would really appreciate it. Again, not a rule, but I would really appreciate if you would send in 3 to 5 questions, and 3 to 5 questions, and these videos can be a little longer, because I don't even know if you guys like sitting through 2 hours of me talking, or if you just skip through parts of it. You probably do, and that's completely okay. Every view counts. Every subscription counts. Every like counts. Everything. So, like I said, I don't know if you guys like me sitting here for 2 hours, hour and a half, even an hour. That's a long-ass time. That's a really long-ass time. I'm completely free and happy to do whatever. Like I said, for the next couple of months anyway, these videos will be that long, for the most part, from an hour to an hour and a half, just because I'm off on break this summer. I'm not going back to school until September. I'll be working and shit, obviously, but I have more time. I won't be having class on Mondays like I do in school when my semester starts up in September. So I can film for an hour, hour and a half, as opposed to limiting it to only 40 minutes. So I like doing the longer videos, but I feel like if we have less questions, less is more. It's kind of go full circle, you know? So if we have less questions, I can make the video shorter. I know I go ramble off on many questions if I kind of go more in depth than I need to, but you guys are great. Your questions are great, so thank you for all the support. And like I said earlier, too, we got a lot of great feedback regarding the show from Facebook, Twitter, friends. It's been awesome. I got even an email from somebody saying they loved the show a couple weeks ago with John. So again, I really appreciate you guys checking on the show. I cannot even stress, could not emphasize enough how much it means to me. So thank you for that. But in the meantime, and in between time, you guys can continue to send your questions on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.Jason.Matthews. And right here on YouTube by leaving your comment in the comment section down below. I'll be sure to include your question in next week's video. So with all that being said, guys, enjoy the Memorial Day episode of Raw tonight. Should be a great show as Money in the Bank draws near. And until then, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.